When a car has been as hugely successful as the Range Rover Sport, you can maybe forgive Land Rover a bit for not wanting to visually change very much. I mean, this is a very clean design. You can see the influence from models like the Velar around the headlights and the Evoque around the grille, but this is pared back design and very much sticking to the template of the previous Range Rover Sport. Again, when you've had that much success, why change what you're doing? Obviously, there is a very strong similarity to the big full fat Range Rover as well. Not very surprising, because underneath there is the same MLA Flex platform, 80% aluminium, so it is lighter than before a little bit, but it's also a little bit lighter than the big Range Rover, only by about 80-90 kilos depending on the model, which in the grand scheme of things is maybe not all that much, because this is in hybrid form a 2.8 ton car. That's a lot. The differences stylistically to the Range Rover are mostly here. You've got big vents on the side, big vents on the bonnet, and if we come around the back, you'll see that the Range Rover's carefully hidden vertical taillights are gone, and instead we get these horizontal units with a black panel with the Range Rover name on them in between. And that's meant to give it a more horizontal look. That's meant to make it look more sort of stanced and planted on the road. And it kind of works, but it has to be said, if you kind of come dead behind it, you can see still that this is a very tall, bulky car. It is no amount of styling in the world is going to change that fact. But of course, the upshot of that is you get lots and lots of practicality. Excuse the bags, but that's a really good boot. Almost 1,000 litres if you stack it all the way to the roof. So not really a lot smaller than what you get in the big Range Rover. And again, the wheelbase is the same. This is shorter overall, it's just under 5 metres long compared to just over 5 metres for the big Range Rover, but it's 50 millimetres lower, so it is that bit sleeker. But the wheelbase, as I say, 2.9 metres, exactly the same. If I get in here and I'm sitting behind myself, I've got so much room, and the seat is nicely reclined. It is hugely comfortable back here. Yes, the roof is a bit closer to my head than it would be in the big one, but honestly, nobody back here is going to complain very much. The only problem is there's no 7-seat model anymore. That was a real USP for the old Range Rover Sport, but Land Rover has decided if you want 7 seats now, you've got to go for the big Range Rover or the Discovery or the Defender. No more 7-seat Range Rover Sport. I do wonder if that will hurt its sales prospects. Up front, well, it's basically the same as the big Range Rover. You're not losing out in any sense. Same fantastically comfortable seats, same big screen with the really quite good PHEV Pro. It's an odd name, I know, but it is a very good system. Here on the screen in the middle, same big screen for your instrument panel. That's quite nice. Same very high quality cabin. There are a few cheap bits. There's some scratchy black plastic up here. I do like the camera operated rear view mirror though. You can switch that on and off here, and it takes a feed from a camera in one of the aerial fins at the back. And that's great if you've got people sitting in the back, or if you have actually loaded up the boot as high as it will go. That's really handy. Overall then, it's as you'd expect. It's a Range Rover Sport. It still looks like a Range Rover Sport. It looks and feels the same as the big Range Rover in here. Even without the 7-seat option, it's still really practical. But the critical question has to be, does it still drive as good as a Range Rover Sport should? Driving the Range Rover Sport, you can instantly feel that while it's not a lot smaller and it's not a lot lighter than the big Range Rover, definitely feels a little bit more up on its toes. The steering has a bit more weight to it. The turn-in is a bit pointier. It does kind of live up to that Sport name. A lot of that is to do with the fact that the structure is very, very stiff. Actually, the Land Rover engineers we were talking to yesterday were saying, and you know, you can read what you want into this, and obviously it's their claim for their own car, but they were saying that the stiffness of the structure of this MLA Flex platform is the envy of sports car makers. And you can readily believe it, because this is knocking on for 2.8 tons of a car, and we're on these twisty mountain roads just outside Madrid, and it's just flowing beautifully from corner to corner. It is a very precise car to drive. Not a lot of feel through the steering, but you don't need lots and lots of feel because the weighting is very good, the accuracy is very good. It's just generally very lovely to drive. A lot of credit for that has to go to the suspension, because although this does, like the big Range Rover, use air suspension, it's a different system. This has two-chamber air suspension. And the best way I can describe that is it's like the Magna-Ride dampers that you get on cars with conventional springs. So it allows the computer system to stiffen up the air springs much more quickly. It provides greater resistance to roll. Plus, there is that active anti-roll system on this car as well, with hydraulics that press down on the springs with up to 1400 Newton meters of force to keep the body level. And you can feel that working. It does work very well. It's not completely perfect because ultimately at the end of the day, this is a big heavy car and it's very tall, albeit 50 millimeters shorter than the big Range Rover. This uses the same P510e hybrid system. So that means you've got 510 horsepower, 700 Newton meters of torque. That's very nearly the same output as you get from the range-topping 4.4 turbo V8 version. And while the V8 does feel a bit quicker and a bit more savage, and it is 1 second quicker to get to 100 kilometers an hour, really, you're not losing out very much. Certainly not in terms of on-road performance, certainly not in terms of what you'll actually do with this car in the real world. And as you can probably hear in the background, it sounds pretty good too. That's a 3-litre 6-cylinder engine up front, which combines with the 105 kilowatt electric motor sandwiched between the engine and the gearbox. So you still get full four-wheel drive even when you're running in pure electric mode. And you can do pure electric mode for up to 113 kilometers on a full charge of the battery. Although, again, the Land Rover engineers say that really more like 80 to 88 kilometers is probably a more realistic amount of electric range, which is still pretty good, certainly, again, for a car of this size. And actually, overall, it's pretty economical. We're averaging 6.6 litres per 100 kilometers on this journey so far, which is about what you'd expect to get from a compact model like a Kia Sportage or a Peugeot 3008 PHEV. So in something this big, that's really quite impressive. Now, the only problem dynamically with this Range Rover Sport is that this one is running on the optional 23-inch rims. These are massive wheels and low-profile tires, and they're really not doing the ride any favors. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it actually rides really well, and when you're on a really good road like this, it feels kind of glidey and nice and smooth and well controlled, but the slightest bump, you will start to feel it, even with that clever air suspension. It is not an entirely comfortable car at all times, as you might think it should be. I hope that on the standard 21-inch rims, it rides much more comfortably. We haven't had a chance to try one in that specification, but like I say, I'm hopeful that it will be a lot more comfortable in that setup, because these 23s, they're really not helping. They're really not doing you any comfort favors, and a car like this really should be about comfort. Space in the back is pretty good. Space in the boot is very practical. Because it's not actually a lot smaller than the big Range Rover, you're not sacrificing all that much in terms of passenger space, comfort and practicality. I do think you're sacrificing a bit of style though. I'm not sure it's as good looking a thing as the bigger Range Rover. And I'm not sure that without the option of 7 seats, you can't have the Sport as a 7-seater anymore. Does that mean it's lost a bit of its appeal? Does that mean that it's lost a bit of its family-friendly nature? Is a Range Rover Sport that's totally focused on being the sport bit just focused in a bit too much? I guess only time will tell. But what is impressive is this hybrid system. It is genuinely point-to-point frugal on a long journey. You can get really good electric range out of it if you fully charge it up every day, every night, make the most of that 38 kilowatt hour battery. You can do probably the vast majority of your daily driving on electric power. And while we wait for the fully electric Range Rover and Range Rover Sport in 2024, that has to be a good thing in the meantime, doesn't it?